Welcome to this edition of Safe and Sound. I'm Kirk Webb, your host, and today we have Rex Thompson from the Forest Service. Good morning, Rex. How are you doing?
Good morning, Kirk. How are you?
Great, thanks. It's good to see you here, and I know we've worked together for several years, but why don't you give me an introduction of what's your experience with the Forest Service and things that you've done with the Forest Service?
Well, thank you. So yeah, I've got about 32 years with the Forest Service. I've worked on engine crews, hand crews, helicopter crews, and currently I work in fire prevention. Doing a lot of patrolling out in the forest, patrolling for abandoned campfires, people out target shooting, making sure people are being safe, educating folks in the forest about how to be safe in the forest and those kinds of things.
So I know we also go into the schools a lot together and educating our kids and that kind of stuff as well too.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Been on a couple of fires, trying to figure out how they started. That's always kind of an interesting topic to look at those kinds of things. And I remember one we worked together where alongside the road, and we found all the chain drags.
Yes.
And located a little piece with a magnet. It's interesting things that you can find to be able to relate how fires start.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of that kind of issue, I know we're in that time of year when kind of preparing for the wildfire season, and what are some of the things we encourage folks to do around their house?
So one thing we want to encourage folks to do around their house is to clean up around their house. Make sure they're removing their debris around their house, vegetation, those kinds of things. With it getting dry this time of year, we just need to make sure they're removing all flammable items within like a 30-foot clearance around your home to protect your home in the event of a wildfire.
I know, and we use the Ready, Set, Go education program, which talks about each that Ready, the Set, the Go, each stands for some different specific topic. And I know like the Ready part is what we're talking about right now, is preparing your home, getting that, looking at those things, what's going to cause a person's house to catch on fire. I know we talk about zones, and some people out there may not understand zones. What are you talking about? Zones around my house, right? Zone 1, I know they've kind of recently changed it the last couple of years. Zone 1's that 0 to 5 foot, and then Zone 2 is 5 foot to 30 foot away from the home. What are some of those things that we're looking for?
As far as removing within the zone?
Right, exactly. What's most concerning, in your opinion, on person's home?
So not only would it be the vegetation that you need to remove, like the brush and those kinds of things, and the brush that's reaching up into the trees that can create that ladder effect, but also you want to look at the things around your home that you enjoy to use, like your lawn furniture, your firewood pile. You don't want that stacked right up against your home. You want to keep those at least 30 to 100 feet away from your home. So.
Right, and I know like decks, open decks.
Yes.
I know when I'm going and talking to homeowners, because it's not if the fire is going to, because maybe a person doesn't live right up against or within the forest, but is a person's house away from the forest still susceptible to wildfire? What are things that that ember cast? How far can a chunk of burning debris float through the air and still be viable to start a house on fire? We're talking.
Yeah, I've seen them go at least a mile, if not more. So
exactly. So it's not, regardless of whether you live, your house is in the forest area or in the town or city, people's homes are still susceptible. So those decks, underneath the decks, if they're open, what's the last time that you've cleaned underneath that deck? Yeah,
or even your open eaves.
Open eaves.
Yes.
Rain gutters.
Yes. Collecting your needles all winter long.
So I know a lot of people have trees that are, large pine trees or other types of trees that are close to the house. Is that tree itself really a danger, or what is it that's really the danger to that house? I know when I'm looking at them, I'm thinking, those branches.
Yes.
And that's where we tell people it's not so much the large portion of the tree, but how close are those branches to the house? That's because the ember landing on a tree trunk, it's not really going to start that tree trunk on fire. It's when it lands in the branches, and are those branches far enough away that the heat, is it going to catch those pile of pine needles that's left on the roof or in the rain gutter, things like that.
I mean, you don't want your branches hanging over the roof, obviously. You know,
right. And I know we tell people, the 10-foot clearance is what you want to optimal.
Yep.
If you can create more space, even better, right?
Definitely. And we want to see people, removing some trees on their properties. You don't have the branches touching each other, because one ember lands in one of those trees, it's going to catch that tree on fire and it's going to go to the next tree. So the more space that you can have between your trees, the better off we all are. Not saying that you have to cut every tree down on your property.
Right. Because we're looking at, and I think the goal that we're looking for is a healthy forest.
Yes.
So as you get out there, I know we as a fire district are dealing more with structures and within we call it the WUI, or the wildland urban interface. It's a lot easier to say WUI than
yes.
But so if you ever hear the term WUI, we're talking about the wildland urban interface, homes that are inside that area that are either in the forested area or close to, in proximity. And so that's where we kind of deal with those more so than you do. You deal more with the open forested area. But when we look at our forests overall, a lot of these areas, would you consider them healthy or unhealthy?
As far as the forests around here that we have, for the most part, they're pretty healthy. I mean, we do have a bark beetle infestation that we're working with, and trying to combat that. But, for the most part, what we're seeing is in the areas that we have treated and done some thinning, we do have a healthier forest. And we've done a lot of treatments up against those WUIs.
And when you talk about treatment, what kind of activities are considered as treatment?
So some things we do for treatments, we'll come in and remove the trees. Not every tree. We have a specified spacing that we'll work with, whether it's a 20-foot spacing between trees, just to maintain that distance, but it's healthy for the forest. And so they'll come in, they'll log it with the loggers, and it's a renewable resource, so they'll use that either for lumber, they'll chip those trees for power plants, or for pellets for your stove. And then after that, once the fuels that are left on the ground have cured and dried enough, we'll actually come in and do a prescribed burn.
Right. And so we're looking at, because I used the term, trying to describe to people what a healthy forest is. It's a little bit difficult, I found, until I started, I kind of, a light bulb went on, said, oh, gee, it's the same thing as raising a garden.
Yes.
And so when people understand, when I'm planting a garden, or they see people that have gardens, when you plant your corn, you may throw 4 or 5 seeds in a hill, and then once they start growing, you pluck out the ones that are weak and keep the ones that's strong, and then throughout the year you start keeping the weeds down.
Yeah,
it's very similar out in the forest. You want to get rid of the weeds. So, because every part of that vegetation is looking for the same amount of water, and same amount of sunlight, everything that's going to make that stuff grow and be healthy. And when you talk about beetle infestation, if you're overcrowded, those trees become weak, and do they survive those beetle attacks?
No, they don't. Yeah, that's the problem that they have, is they're so close together and tight knit that they can't combat that off. So,
and I know one of the things that we deal with is we live in an area where there's lots of rock.
Yes.
Does that rock make a difference on the viability of that soil being able to help create a healthy forest?
And that does become tough with the soil type, with those roots trying to be able to get into the ground and get that moisture and that kind of thing.
So when you have the prescribed treatment area, they're not clear cutting, are they?
No, not at all. We don't clear cut.
So you have a specialist that comes in and marks the trees. And I know I've had the question, what do the orange marks or whatever type of marks in the forest mean? What is that part of that process of deciding what trees to stay or what trees go? How does that work?
So yeah, as far as the orange marks that are on the trees, those are trees that are going to be left. So, and then if there's a blue mark on the trees, those are the ones that are going to be taken.
So that makes it a little easier. If you're in a heavily forested area, it's a lot easier for the specialist going through that's marking and identifying these trees to use the orange mark to say these ones are staying and other ones blue. So it makes it a little easier for those guys to come in and mark that area. And
so, and even as a contractor, that's going to be working on that sale, to cut those trees. They'll have an idea. Okay, all the trees within a sale will be marked the same, whether they're cut or leaf tree.
And those areas, those contractors, they're very conscientious about not disturbing the soils as much as possible. And I know some people complain about, oh my gosh, it looks terrible in there, and they've gone in and destroyed the whole thing. But there's certain requirements for those contractors going in and doing that thinning process of rehabilitation and all that kind of stuff as well too, isn't there?
Yes, that's correct. And even as far as like impacting the soils, we monitor the soil moisture when we're out there and making sure that they aren't doing too much impact to the soil.
And honestly, we start transitioning from, say, winter and spring, and everything starts drying up. Are there times that you actually shut them down or restrict their movements, things like that?
Yeah, depending on the weather conditions and the fire conditions that we're having, whether we're in extreme fire danger or we're having a red flag warning, where the winds are really high, low RHs or humidity, then we will shut them down. They can either have what they call a hoot owl, where they'll shut down at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or we'll just shut them down all day altogether. And there are times where conditions are better at night, and we'll actually allow them to work at night.
So there's lots of interesting things. Now, if the general public, if they have questions or concerns, what's the best way to find out the proper things that are happening out there, or where they can find that information of where they should go? Should they rely on social media and everybody that's saying, oh, they do this and they would do that, or whatever the case? What's the best way to make contact to get the right information?
So the best thing that folks can do if they want to get information about what we're doing out there, whether it's logging or prescribed burning or those kinds of things, they can contact the Lakeside Ranger District office, or they can contact our supervisor's office in Springerville.
So you're connected with all of the whole, because it's not only just the Lakeside Ranger District, it's the Apache Sitgraves National Forest. How big is that area?
Oh geez, it's probably like, I can't even think the actual acreage size, but it's a pretty decent sized forest, and it covers 5 ranger districts. We have the Clifton Ranger District down on the southern part, kind of down by Morenci in that area. And then we have the Alpine Ranger District over in Alpine, and then Springerville, which is in Springerville, and then the lakeside here around the Sholo, Pinetop Lakeside area, and then we have the Black Mesa District over in Heber Overgard.
So it covers all the way from near Clifton, Morenci, to the south, all the way going up north, clear over to Heber Overgard, and even beyond there.
Out to the edge of the rim.
So it's a very large forest.
Yes.
But if you were to look at it on an aerial map, it's all pretty consistent and continuous. In fact, I'm pretty certain that, don't we have the largest contiguous pine tree or ponderosa forest in the world, isn't it?
Yes, we do.
And so, I know, talking with other people from other states, they say Arizona it's all desert, right?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. It's really pretty forested, and so we're very concerned about keeping a healthy forest, don't wanting our forest to burn. And unfortunately, this forested area has historically had now the 2 largest fires in the state of Arizona.
Yes.
And we don't want to see, so what's coming up, we have a week that's kind of set aside as a wildfire week, or what's that week called?
So it's called the Southwest Wildfire Awareness Week, which goes from March 29th through April 4th.
And so with that, you want to kind of create an awareness, and not just only during that week, but it's kind of set aside for that week to create that awareness. But it's a good time to have a certain campaign to get that information out. And what kind of things did you cover in that awareness week?
So we can cover everything from ready, set, go, being ready for the wildfire season, preparing yourself, your home. We talk about debris burning, those kinds of things, and how you can still do those things, but how you just need to prepare yourself and the things that you need to do if you're going to do some debris burning. We talk about campfire safety and having campfires out in the woods, target shooting, several different topics to prepare ourselves for the wildfire season.
So when you talk about debris, open debris burning, I know we as a fire district, we want people to, one, get a permit, because that's important. So regardless of what area you live in, if you fall within a fire district area, contact that local fire district. What is it that you have? How can you get a burn permit? I know with our district, you can actually go online and fill out and get a burn permit. It doesn't cost anything, but it has all the rules and regulations of what we want people to follow, because we don't want people, one, burning up their own house, and definitely, two, not to burn the neighbor's property and things like that, because if they catch the neighbor's property on fire, they're liable for any and all costs that may be associated with catching that property on fire. And we definitely don't want people to get burnt.
Yes.
So looking at those kinds of things, what's the things that you have to comply with within your local jurisdiction?
Yeah.
And it's not like we're trying to tell people they can't do it, but it's like, let's do it safely.
Yep.
And I know with ours and find out with other districts, what are there certain days that you can burn and not burn? I know in the springtime, when it's typically that time when people are coming up from the valley, and now they want to, since we live in a living forest, these branches have a tendency to grow back. The grasses have a tendency to grow back as well. And one way to get rid of this stuff is take it to the dump or the green waste facilities.
Yep.
But if they don't do that, there's the option that they still can burn, but follow the rules, please.
Yeah. And I think the key thing is, every day is not going to be a burn day, but if it's not a burn day, there's still things that you could do. Start preparing your yard, start cleaning up. Just because you can't burn that day doesn't mean that you can't start preparing your home and to protect your home and cleaning up the debris. So when there is a burn day, you can burn it. You just want to make sure that you're having small piles, follow the rules.
Right. And then you also talked about going into camping.
Yes.
That's the time of year camping start. We've been cooped up because of the winter, and we want to go out and enjoy the forest. It's starting to warm up and be nice, and a lot of people go out, and hunting season's coming in, and things like that. Same thing. But as we transition from spring going into summer, well, now there's going to be days that forest might be closed.
Yes.
And certain areas. And how many times, we look at the wallow fire. Wallow fire was started from what? An unattended campfire.
Yep.
And I don't think they intended for that to get out of hand.
No.
But what's the proper process for extinguishing a camp? I know we talk to the kids quite often about this. What do you tell them?
So what I tell them is we want to drown it with water, stir it up really good with your shovel, and then you want to feel it with the back of your hand.
And why the back of your hand?
Because the palm of your hand is really sensitive to fire, and if you get that burned, it'll damage your dexterity in your hands. So you really want to use the back of your hand. You don't want to put it in the fire. You just want to put it over the fire to see if you feel any heat. And if you do feel any heat, then you want to repeat that process over again. Right,
because how long can those? Let's say there's even a chunk of the wood that say it's like this big in diameter, a couple inches. If that's still warm, are there hidden coals inside of that chunk of wood? And how long could they last? And
I found them within the next day that have been from the previous night. So
and that wind comes up.
Yep.
And it actually reignites that chunk of wood, because there's still burnable fuel in that size and even smaller.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, you break it up, use that shovel, get dirt, throw it in there, get more water. And because I know even first aid, we teach kids, if you get serious burns on your hands or feet, those are considered serious burns and probably should go to a burn center.
Yes.
Another topic that you talked about was target shooting. How many people in our area like to go shooting?
We all do, including myself.
Right.
So, yeah. And target shooting, we do get some fires from target shooting, so you need to make sure that you're having an area void of vegetation if you're going to target shoot against a backdrop. One thing within the National Forest is we do not allow any exploding targets.
So when you talk about exploding targets, what do you mean? What kind of stuff are they using to?
So tannerite.
Okay.
You cannot use any tannerite on the national forest. So.
And I know not too far distant past there was a person that started a large fire just from a baby. Given an interesting way on how to tell the world what kind of baby they're going to have, whether a boy or a girl, right?
Yep.
And using that type of stuff, and so it started a forest fire.
Yeah.
Grassland fire more, but still those kinds of things, very innocent and kind of, a unique way to make that. To show it to the world, but yet didn't think about it too clearly, did they?
Yeah, exactly.
And so unintentionally, people can do things that are not so smart. And so be very cautious. Go to those areas that are designated and designed for target shooting.
Yes.
Don't do things that are outside of the range or outside of the spectrum of what's allowable and not. Those rules are set to protect us.
Yep.
And because now that person was liable for the cost of putting that fire out.
Yeah.
And so what about some of the other things we talked about? Going camping. What are some the target shooting? We talked about ready, set, go. Let's say we do get the situation. We have a fire that gets started, and now we're looking at that possibility of having to evacuate. What are some of the things that we look at that maybe we need to be prepared for?
So, and that kind of falls into the ready, set, go. So we're getting to the portion where you need to be set, because we do have a fire that has started. So you want to start preparing all your important documents, getting your medications, know where your family members are if your kids aren't home or your other family members are out and about in the town. Getting your animals. Animals is a big thing. We tend to forget about our pets, and even our larger animals. A lot of people have horses, goats. I have goats myself and horses. So those are things that we need to prepare those things for to evacuate, and how are we going to get them evacuated, and where are we going to take them?
Right, and I know we have situations where Red Cross may come in and help out with a lot of that kinds of things, but especially you mentioned pets, and something I think people forget a lot. Are they on medications?
Yeah.
Are you on medications? Do we kind of forget about those kinds of things?
Yeah.
We talk about important documents. Things that can't be replaced, can they be put into a simple file box that you can easily grab? And I know we talk about a to-go kit. As we transition into that season that now we're getting toward the possibility of a forest fire, and we might need to be evacuated, it's not a bad idea to get that to-go kit ready to go and be ready and to where, because if you have to stop, because a forest fire, if it starts in close to your backyard, you may not have that much time to be able to gather all this stuff. So it's nice to have it ready beforehand.
Yeah, and everybody needs to know where it's at as well, because it may not be you grabbing it, it may be somebody else grabbing that for you. Right,
and you talk about having a plan with your family, because people going to school, going to work, all these different kinds of activities going on, and if you got it in a moment's notice, have that plan ahead of time. Where can you go? Where can you meet up after the fact? Things like that. So I know we've talked about a whole variety of things, and even beyond getting that set and possibly being ready, and let's say they do give the order to evacuate. I know we try to tell people, don't hesitate, just go.
Yes.
Things can be replaced. People cannot. How many of these recent forest fires in other areas of the country have we had that there's been unnecessary deaths because of that forest fire? I mean, every year.
Every year. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we look at the campfire that's still pretty fresh in a lot of our minds. And so those are things, when you're told to go, you need to go. And by doing that, it gives us a chance to get in there and actually effectively do our jobs to suppress that fire. and not having to worry about trying to get folks evacuated.
Right.
So, I mean, there's going to be times where it's going to be go, and that there's not going to be a lot of time to grab a lot of different things. So yeah, having that go kit is definitely viable.
So if we get into that situation, don't hesitate. Just get the important things that you have, and having it ready to go makes it so much easier.
Yes.
So much less stress to think about things like that. And just go. Keep yourself safe. Don't hesitate to leave. Yeah. I appreciate you being able to be here on the show with us, and I know in this really short amount of time, there's a lot of things that we discussed, and there's probably a whole lot more that we could have talked about.
Oh, yes.
But thank you for coming on the show with us. This is Rex Thompson from the Forest Service. And in your list of duties, huge. I know you have a whole lot of things that you got to do, but I appreciate you taking time to come and talk and inform. And if people have questions, call Rex at the Forest Service, Lakeside Ranger District, or myself, Kirk Webb, over at Timber Mesa, and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Safe and Sound, and we'll see you next month.